Welcome, everyone, and thank you to those of you joining us live for this latest edition of the OmniTalk Retail Ask an Expert series. I am one of your co-hosts for today's interview, Chris Walton.
And I'm Anne Mezzenga.
And we are the founders of OmniTalk, the fast-growing retail media outlet that is all about the companies, the technologies, and the people that are coming together to shape the future of retail, or as we like to say, the media organization that focuses on tomorrow, today. Now, Anne, we've spent significant time both on this podcast series as well as in our weekly Fast Five podcast, discussing all the ways that generative AI can improve retailing. But what we haven't done yet is discuss how we can evaluate which AI use cases are right for your retail operation. We want to get practical today. That's the intention of this webinar. So to help us with that, we have called upon two experts, David Dorf, the global head of retail solutions at AWS, and Filippo Battaini, the research manager for retail insights at the analyst house IDC. So without further ado, because we have a lot to dig into with both of them, David and Filippo, thank you for joining us and welcome to OmniTalk.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this discussion.
Nice to be here, Chris. Thanks a lot.
It's great to have you both.
I know, Chris, you got me singing like "Let's get practical" instead of "Let's get physical." Like now it's just like,
oh wow,
be
like
the
you're going to Olivia Newton-John.
I know.
Wow.
Let's get practical.
I love it.
Well, before we get practical and get into our discussion, just a quick reminder for all of you who are watching the early release of this interview live with us right now on LinkedIn. Please go ahead, ask these gentlemen your questions at any time via the chat session window on the right-hand side of your screen. We have a whole wealth of knowledge available to you literally at your fingertips today. So make sure to put those questions in the chat. David, let's get started with you. We have a lot to cover today. So I want to go to you right out of the gate. What is your perspective on the topic of kind of evaluating all of these AI cases? And maybe if you can share a little bit before that of like what your specific expertise is in this area.
Yeah, sure, Ann. I've been in the retail industry for about 25 years. It's been, wow, a long time. A lot of NRFs.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a combination of vendors and retailers. So, for example, I worked at Circuit City for many years and AMF Holdings.
Blast from the past.
Shut the front door, Circuit City. Wow.
I know you Best Buy guys over there. But it was good times. And through those 25 years, you know, I've really come to really love the retail industry. And one of the companies I've really admired was Amazon. So when I had a chance to go to AWS and work on the retail industry within AWS, I jumped at the opportunity. You know, Amazon and AWS have been using artificial intelligence since, I think, 1998 when they first started doing personalized recommendations, right? So it's been a really long time. And what I really like about AWS is that it is a combination of the retail expertise plus all this technology kind of pulling it together. And that's been really great for me. And, you know, I think that's a unique area in the market. And I often get asked like, hey, I want to do something with Gen AI. What are some ways to find use cases to work on? And one of the mental exercises I like to say is, what would you do if you had 1,000 interns that were free? And if you just think about that for a minute,
that is such a good question. Oh my God.
Yeah, you start to think about scale. You start to think about, well, I got smart guys, but they're not experts, right? They're not really, really experts. So how can I start to use that? And you start to think, well, I'm going to have them go through all my product pages and update them with better descriptions. Well, Gen AI can do that. You know, it starts to lead you to think that mental exercise into different ways to find use cases that can benefit retailers. So that's kind of a lot of what I do is think about how to really address these issues.
Wow, David Dorf dropping nuggets right in the first, what is that, 4 minutes of this interview? Like, I love that. That's such great advice. Wow, I love it.
Well, Filippo, I want to go to you next. Same question. You know, what's your kind of background and how do you approach thinking about today's topic of use cases for AI?
As part of my research, I focus extensively on retail technology and commerce. I've been in this industry for a while now. It's been like almost 15 years in this capacity at IDC. Also, previously, I was working for a boutique company, consulting company, always focusing on retail technology. So, of course, you know, AI and generative AI has been a big topic in the last couple of years, particularly since the advent of generative AI, that brought a lot of attention also to the application of AI in general in the retail space. So we saw really a lot of interest in that sense, and we speak regularly with industry players, with retailers, and what's probably surprising of this wave of new technology, we had like different waves, like in the past. So pre-pandemic, we were talking about a lot about the blockchain. Then we had like the metaverse in more recent time. Here, I think the approach that we are seeing in terms of the retail industry is very much, it's much more sensible in a way that the main factors that retailers have in mind when thinking of application of generative AI and AI in particular, it's really about what is the return of investment.
Right.
You know, what are the use cases that I can implement that hopefully they can generate some impact on my bottom line. So I think this is a big differentiator compared to what we saw in the past.
And you and the team at IDC actually came up with a way to measure this, right? Or to kind of like catalog this with something that you created called the Techscape. Is that correct?
Correct. So essentially, as part of our research, we are always trying to give some information to technology users and to companies, in my case, in the retail industry, and to help them out to basically prioritize and select what are the best technologies out there for their technology roadmap, for their strategy. And the IDC Techscape that we recently published, which is focusing on AI for commerce, so the application of AI technology in commerce, aim exactly to that. So it lists essentially a series of technologies, use cases enabled by AI technology, and the companies, the technology vendors that can enable these technologies for retailers. And we're trying to give a broad overview of what's out there in order to help them out to understand what's best for their technology strategy, essentially.
And this I imagine has to be a living document because those use cases are evolving so regularly.
Exactly. So we are trying to update this kind of documents regularly. Fortunately, we just published, so it's a recent work that we've done. So we are confident they are still relatively relevant, despite the technology is moving very fast.
Got it. So, well, Filippo, let's pull up the Techscape then, so we can see. Let's all take a look at it together here on this webinar. And for those that are listening to audio later, a link to the Techscape can also be found in the podcast notes. And it's something that Anne and I would highly encourage you all to look at, because I think, you know, the other point I would make too, Filippo, off what you said before, is it kind of makes sense that retailers are taking a practical approach to the application of AI, given the desire to find a good return on investment from the tech investments they're making. I think they've learned a lot over the last, 5 to 10 years in that regard. So take us through it. What exactly are we looking at here?
Yeah, that would make sense actually to see what the report is all about. So as you can see here on the screen, this is the main chart of the report. Of course, it's a report that goes in depth then in the analysis of all the various technology that you are seeing on the screen. But essentially, we are listing about 17 AI-enabled technologies that are used in commerce to streamline commerce operation for brands and retailers. And we plotted the use cases according to their level of adoption. So you see low adoption to high adoption, and according to the timeline of implementation. So you have technologies that are faster to implement, other that will take longer to implement. And also we group together these technologies based on what we believe is the impact of the application of these technologies on the retail operation. So as you can see, we have technologies on the green line that are transformational. So we believe they have the potential of changing the way retailers operate. Then on the blue line, we have incremental technologies. So those that they have a broader impact on the operation. They're not exactly transformational, but they have a broader impact on retail operation beyond their specific remit, their specific application. And then we have on the dark blue line, the opportunistic one. So these are the ones that are more focusing on specific use cases that they don't really have an impact across the organization, but certainly they'll help retailers to make operation more efficient and more effective in that particular remit.
So when I look at this question for you, Filippo, when I look at this from left to right, then green, blue, and kind of purplish, am I correct in assuming then that the ones more to the left are going to have the bigger financial impact over time on the bottom lines of the retailers too? Or is that the wrong way to think about it? Is that not what this is getting at?
No, I don't think it's really about the financial impact. It's more about the impact on the operation. So
the organizational change that will
exactly
have to be thought about if you're going to do this. Okay.
It's really about the transformational, incremental, and opportunistic. So the one that are transformational, of course, they have the potential to have a bigger impact on the overall operation of retail organization.
Okay, got it. So the retailers then looking at this as we're going to have this discussion have to really think about that in terms of what's the degree of change that's required from doing these things as against what they're assessing is the ROI that can be gained from that too, which is not always a one-for-one exchange. So that's something the retail executives are definitely going to have to think through.
Right. I mean,
exactly.
David, yeah, I'm curious to get your opinion, David. What do you think about, generally any thoughts that you might have about the Techscape that Filippo just shared?
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic foundational place to start for retailers. There's 17 use cases in here and there's no fat, right? So these are all really important use cases for retailers. And I love the way that they're sort of dialed differently. So if you're looking for something that you want to adopt quickly, you can pick the ones that have a speed of adoption of fast, right? And if you want ones that have lower risk, you can do that. I think it's great for retailers to pick something that's going to have a good ROI that is easy to implement so you can get that win under your belt. And then the return on the investment can be used to then power the next thing that you want to go after, right? So you can sort of serialize them and go after several of these. And I think in addition to the Techscape, I a lot of times like to think about use cases across 4 different dimensions. So firstly, I like to think, how can I help the customer? So things like conversational search or better fit for fashion so we can reduce returns, that sort of thing. Those are the types of use cases that I think about for customers. Then I think, how can I help employees? So how can I speed up development of planograms or create a knowledge management center where they can ask questions and get answers very quickly? The third area is, what can I do for product? So can I, for example, analyze customer reviews to look for product issues? Maybe packaging is bad or there's a defect in the product or something like that. And then lastly is, what can I use in IT, which is admittedly the most boring of the 4. But in IT, there are lots of opportunities to speed up coding with coding assistance and things like that. So I think it's really important that retailers look across the entire taxonomy and they get a balance of experimental things that they're not really sure the ROI, but they want to try it out. And then some things that are definitely going to have a strong ROI. And you have sort of a basket of both of those types of use cases to go after.
All right. So David, I kind of alluded to this already, but Anne and I have been on record. I think, Anne, God, what has it been, like 2 years at least? I think, right? 2 years that we've been saying this is the show me the money year so it's been the show me the money year for 2 years now for retail tech investment, meaning the tech investments have to pay off, right? That's what that whole phrase means in our minds. But so with that as the lens, David, then what are the use cases surrounding AI or even generative AI, however you want to parse it out, that could be an immediate boon to a retailer's profitability?
I think one of the best examples is demand forecasting. And demand forecasting's been around for a long time, right? And retailers do it at different levels. Some retailers are still back in Excel figuring that out, and they have a lot of art. Other retailers have gotten more sophisticated and have acquired some very powerful products. But a lot of those are antiquated, and there's been a lot of advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And one of the cool things about the approach that we've taken with demand forecasting is that we understand that different products have different profiles and require different algorithms. And so we match up the right algorithm to the right product, whether it's seasonal or non-seasonal or whatever. to figure out what the best demand forecast is. So as a great example, we've been working with the Very Group in the UK. Are you guys familiar with them?
Yes.
They're huge, right? One of the largest e-commerce vendors in the UK. And they came to us and said, hey, we want to improve our demand forecasting. And so we ran something like 70 different experiments with them, creating something like 8 million forecasts, right? To really tune this thing and figure out how to make it work best. And the end result was we delivered about a 9.9% improvement in SKU management, resulting in about 110 million pounds of savings just through implementing a new version of demand forecasting. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit still out there just by updating to the latest technology.
David, as a former demand forecaster, the one thing that I always question though on this, because you hear this use case a lot, Anne and I've talked about this use case a lot, is how do you actually measure the impact of it to the point where you have a degree of confidence that it's working? Because there's so many things in retail that can impact how inventory is moving. You could be selling a product that's just capturing the trend at a period of time, for example, or the price might be more right or more promotional at a given period of time. So how do you think about that? Or as you're talking with retailers that are going through these implementations, how do you give them the confidence that they are knowing that the investment is paying off?
Yeah, a lot of times what we do are we do a lot of back testing. So we say, here's the forecast, and had we have used this other forecast, we'll back test it, and then we'll compare the two and see which one works out better. Okay. Sometimes we have to pull out things like promotional lift or weather phenomena, things like that could impact your demand forecast, just to clean it up and make it an apples to apples comparison. And that's why it took us all these experiments to get this right. So you're trying different things, you're trying different algorithms just to tune it and just get it right for your product catalog.
Got it. Filippo, let's bring you in here. Do you agree with David on the assessment of demand forecasting being an immediate place to impact profitability?
Yeah, demand forecasting has a lot of potentials in terms of the application of AI in retail. You have to think like a company like Very, for instance. They have like about 500,000 SKUs at any moment in time. So it's really important for them to use all the information that they have available, whether in-house or external factors, to be able to compute that kind of forecasting capabilities that really helps them to streamline operation. Maybe another application of AI, and in particular of generative AI, that we saw retailers are already investing in it and are already implementing is generative AI for product description. Again, it's something that especially in e-commerce, e-commerce retailers, they have a lot of SKUs all the time, and they really need to ensure a consistency in terms of product description. So that's really useful to have a tool like generative AI to create the same level of product information for all the range of products that retailers can sell.
Mm. Yeah, on that, we have a customer that went through that very use case. This customer was a West Coast retailer that was importing a lot of products from China. And so the product descriptions were very scant. So like you get things like bicycle.
Right. If you're lucky, probably too, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah, so not very good, right? So what we did is we used generative AI with this retailer to be able to take the image that came with it, and we use generative AI to pull out the attributes from that image and then collect a bunch of attributes about that product. We take whatever product description they gave us. And then the third ingredient there is the product voice or the brand voice, right? So for example, the Target brand voice is very different than a Walmart brand voice. And so you want your descriptions to be in that right voice. So we used all that information to generate product descriptions. They said it would take between 1 and 2 weeks for them to get a new product up on the website before this. After, it took 1 to 2 days at most. Because we would generate such a good product description, we always still have human in the loop, so the copywriters would still go in there and make the tweaks that they wanted. But that really, really sped the process up. Getting those products on the web allowed them to sell sooner and make more money.
Well, David, you kind of got me thinking too about like how that then can impact like things like personalization. I mean, is that something that you're seeing a lot? We hear that a lot too. Like AI is helping these creative teams come up with, 6 different versions or even getting further down the line. Is that something that you're seeing is paying off for retailers that you've worked with?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
one example is luxury department store retailer that we were working with had decided to do an email campaign with product recommendations using personalization. Pretty standard, great,
Yeah.
Right.
very low click through. Just they weren't getting any traction with it. So this luxury retailer has a lot of store associates that know the customers, and so they had them write emails to make the product recommendations. And so they used the store staff to actually create emails that went out to their best customers, and they got a great click-through rate. But here's the problem. That's very labor intensive.
Yeah, I
Little
was gonna
bit,
say,
little bit.
that's
in the store.
that's what you need those
Especially when you
1,000
work at a
interns.
store.
Yeah,
That's
you need
right.
those 1,000 interns for that.
You need those 1,000 interns. So we applied Gen AI to that. So we take the product recommendation, we take a lot of the information about the customer and do hyper-personalization to create a very engaging email. And then we use the store staff just to check over that email. Human in the loop, make a few tweaks here and there, and that's it. Saves them tons of time, still has that personalization from the human touch and from the information we have, and their click-through rates went up. Good click-through rates, low labor usage. It's a win-win.
And those are the use cases that, to me, I think are a little bit under the covers in terms of how the national media is covering this topic too, because you get the impact on the employees' proficiency or their efficiency. And then also you probably get the psyche impact for the employee too, where they feel like they're actually making an impact and their job is just that much less laborious too. So that's a great example, David. I'm curious too, like I think we've got 3 great examples already that could be immediately impactful. Like we love 5s on this show at OmniTalk. So are there a couple more that either maybe we'll go for to give us one more from each of you that you would recommend retailers look at very hard right now, the practical application of doing so. So Filippo, what do you think?
One other possible application is really about using AI and all, for instance, the IoT technology, the sensors that retailers have in physical stores to prevent shrinkage, for instance, and increase security. So that's really a good tangible use cases that retailers can implement straight away with what they already have in store, and leveraging computer vision cameras and sensors that they use for instance, to monitor the activities within the store to prevent shrinkages, which has been a big problem in the last couple of years in certain markets. So I think this is a really interesting application that retailers are looking at.
Got it. You're saying, Filippo, then like taking the standard cameras that they already have, but figuring out how to use them to deploy computer vision AI to watch the floor plan and to use AI analytics to understand what's happening inside of the store at any given time.
Exactly, because of one big trend that we saw in retail since the end of the pandemic is really the digitalization of the physical store. So that means that this is a way to streamline operation within the physical store and to have the same or a similar level of information that retailers that can get in a digital environment, so online. So this is a trend that we've seen. And at this point in time, retailers have the technology already applied in store that gathers a lot of information, a lot of data that they can be used for personalization, of course, in the physical store context, but also to prevent situations that can lead to shrinkage, for instance.
Got it.
Yeah, that I'm going to show my age for a second here, but that reminds me of the old days where we used to hire people with clipboards to follow shoppers around the store.
Right.
And see what the path to purchase was and where they were spending time.
My hunch is that's still happening, David.
Well, with video analytics, you can do that at scale, automated. And eventually it could lead us, it has the potential to lead us to the Minority Report, right? Where we could actually tune our retail media networks to actually talk to people in the store. Maybe someday, not right now, but that could be in the future.
Right. All right, so what's one last use case, David? What's one more? Give us the 5. Give us the 5th.
So let me switch over to maybe CPG a little bit.
Okay.
All right.
So I think we've all experienced writer's block. And if I said, Anne, design me a new shoe right now, you probably wouldn't know where to start, would you?
No, I would not.
Yeah. So
don't give me that assignment.
we've been working with some big shoe retailers that we've helped them basically take their entire catalog of past shoe designs, put them into a knowledge base, and then we use generative AI to create ideas for them, ideation. So, hey, I want a sneaker that celebrates the NBA finals, and it'll design 3 or 4 different versions. And then that inspires the designer to actually design a shoe. So you're not starting from scratch every time. So you're getting some ideas based on all the history. I remember not long ago, there was a huge social media uproar when Nike created a wedding sneaker, which was really cool. It takes inspiration from wedding, has a little veil and all that kind of stuff. There are so many cool things we can do like that. And using generative AI just in the ideation process can really help employees.
Right.
Yeah,
It gives
that's a
them
good-
like a catapult, like it just makes them start at a totally better place, like it accelerates that
Exactly.
part.
It's not,
Yeah.
I'm not saying we replace them and have computers design shoes. I'm saying computers can help move the process along.
Yeah, that's been another big aha for me in the last month. Like we had a 3D AI company that we interviewed recently, and the big aha for me was what you're saying, David, too, is that if you use particularly generative AI in the right way, it's actually just an explosion of creativity that can come from its correct application. And so everyone in the organization can just be that much more creative. You can do things with your mind that you're not able to do before. And again, that's exciting for people too. So I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many ways to help employees. I'll give you another example. I just was working with a partner, Amplins. They are a CMS company and they deal with images quite a bit. Given a product image, they can now layer in a bunch of different backgrounds.
Right.
So Chris, you hit the product page and
Right.
you like snow sports. So I'm going to put this particular fashion item up on the top of a mountain covered in snow and get you attracted to it, right? That's hyper-personalization of product images that can really start to engage people. So instead of having this expensive photographer go all over the world and take different pictures, we can generate that stuff now.
Yeah, and you can do it at scale too, right? So not
Absolutely.
only can you just do it easier, but you can do it more often too. That's the other key point here.
Yeah, absolutely. At scale is key.
Well, let's close up the discussion with this final question for each of you. Given everything that we've talked about, you both have shared some excellent case studies. Where would you recommend that retailers who are listening start? What's the first step that they should take? Filippo, I'd go to you first.
Like any application of the technology, what we always recommend end users, retailers to look at is actually what is the end goal of applying the technology. So essentially what I'm thinking of is, you need to give priority to your strategy, what you are trying to achieve, the kind of, for instance, customer journey that you want to offer to your shoppers, and then work backwards to identify, and that's why we actually wrote this IDC Techscape to help retailers identify what are the best use cases, what are the best technologies that can lead you there where you want to go. And then the second important things to consider when applying technology as retailers is actually to partner up and to create a strong partnership with the right technology vendor. So again, here it's a question of thinking of, what is that I'm trying to achieve by applying the technology? What is my end goal and what are my needs? What are my particular needs? So do I need a technology vendor that understands my industry?
Right.
That has, for instance, a special view of how the retail industry works. Do I need them to help me scale? Do I need to have something delivered in a personalized way or customized for my particular operation? So I think these are the questions that retailers need to ask themselves when selecting the right technology vendor.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Filippo, too, especially as some larger retailers are so used to doing this themselves or to building this internally. And I think this is a moment now where you really have to be thinking about, is it smarter to find those partners who can execute, who have the background, the experience, and really the ability to move at the speed at which, working on with AI really requires? Or is it something that you want to take on internally or, kind of really thinking through that strategy? David, what would you say to this? Where would you tell retailers to begin?
I think starting with that Techscape from IDC is a great place to start. The 17
Yeah.
use cases are all really, really strong. Again, I think they should be thinking of a taxonomy around the 4 dimensions that I mentioned: customer, employee, product, and IT. I think when you start there and sort of branch out, you'll start to figure out all sorts of areas where you can apply generative AI. And the other thing I'll mention is, it's hard to place bets right now. I mean, we all said, hey, GPT's the best. Oh, wait a minute, now Llama's the best. Wait, Claude has caught up. So, you know, the large language models that are out there are changing and getting better all the time. So make sure that you're flexible. Make sure that you're able to switch those in and out as necessary. Make sure that you're choosing the right foundation models for the right job so you can be cost effective.
Picking the right place to start is one thing, and getting the team organized around is another. But what have you seen work from an organizational standpoint to make sure that the organization is moving in the right direction as they try to go after these use cases?
Yeah, I think it has to be a top-down adoption of generative AI, but there's no generative AI department. There's no AI department per se. It's part of every department, and everyone should be thinking in those terms. And so the best successes I've seen are where the retailer actually invests some time to train employees and get them thinking in these terms. How can Gen AI help me day to day? How can it help my customers? How can it help me have better products? And they come up with these ideas, and then you need to have a way to centralize those ideas and then evaluate them and then execute on building prototypes and testing them out. It's no different than any other new technology. You have to want to do it. You have to invest in doing it, and it has to be across the entire organization.
So the analogy that's coming to my head, it's kind of like wine. You have to like let it breathe a little bit in the organization to get the full flavor of the palate on your palate, so to speak, and to get the full benefit of it. Is that right?
I like that. That sounds really good, Chris.
Okay, awesome.
If you
awesome.
have wine of that quality that's not in a box or a can, correct?
That's right. Italian wines are the best, right, Filippo?
Exactly, yeah.
Right. Got to let it breathe. Got to let generative AI breathe in the organization. That's good. That's a great note to end on too. I love it.
It is. I just want to thank you both so much for your very insightful and in-depth explanations, case studies, for sharing all of your knowledge around this with our audience. That's definitely key to what we try to do here on the Ask an Expert series. I'm curious if people want to go deeper into the conversation, they want to get in touch with either of you to pick your brains or learn more. What's the best way for them to do that? Filippo, I'll start with you first, and then we'll go to you, David.
So the best way is probably via email. So fbattaini@idc.com, or via LinkedIn. So you just search by name and surname, and I come up.
Spell that last name for us, Filippo.
So it's Battaini.
Excellent.
Nice.
David, how about you?
Probably the easiest way is through LinkedIn. Just reach
All
out
right.
to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to connect.
Cool. Always love that.
Excellent. Well, that wraps us up. Thank you so much to all of you who joined us live today on LinkedIn. Thank you again to David and Filippo for sitting down with us today. And on behalf of all of us here at OmniTalk, as always, be careful out there.